Hello guys and girls, Screezilla here and I hope you're all well. And, well, it's been announced on War Thunder that we will be getting light cruisers. Yes, something that I speculated about a while back. If you're following my channel for the naval stuff for War Thunder, then you will know that I'm quite into that section. And I have talked in depth about the addition of cruisers and things like that. Believing that light cruisers are definitely the way to go for the game mode, bigger maps, things like that. But anyway, we have had the announcement of light cruisers. So we will be getting an A-class light cruiser for the Italian nation, the Condottieri. Now, the Condottieri were the first Italian cruisers to be built after the First World War. In the 1930s, these heavily armoured scouts were designed in response to the new French destroyers, the Jaguar, the Lion, and the Agile. With an excellent maximum speed of 37 knots, the Italian light cruiser also boasted much more powerful armament and 24mm belt armour. The primary armament included 8 152mm guns, 4 turrets with 2 in each, as well as 6 100mm long-range cannons, 2 twin 533mm torpedo tubes, mines. The anti-aircraft armament comprised of 2 40mm autocannons and 8 large caliber Breda model 31 13.2mm machine guns, 4 in twin mounts. For War Thunder, we have recreated one of the cruisers from this illustrious series, the Bartolomeo Coloni, named after famous Italian condottieri from the 15th century. The ship was built in 1931, and at the start of the Second World War she formed the 2nd Cruiser Division in the 2nd Squadron together with the other condottieri cruisers in the series. Deployment highlighted serious navigability issues, which meant that the light cruisers were unable to chase down the enemy destroyers, and the armour and survivability of the Condottieri was markedly lower than that of a standard cruiser. Nevertheless, the Italian light cruisers developed the idea for the first French light cruisers and created a new concept for the ship type of global shipbuilding, with subsequent light cruiser projects using the experience the Italian engineers learned to improve their designs. Now, it's a very pretty ship, but basically this is a large destroyer. It was made to counteract the French destroyers, which were basically light cruisers. It gets very confusing at this period of time. Anyway, it is a very pretty little ship. The 152mm guns and the 102mm auxiliary guns will be very useful. It is a relatively large boat. I do wonder if we will be getting mines, because they did mention that quite a lot. Now, the thing with a cruiser is it does sit very deep in the water, so you're going to have to really watch out for islands and stuff like that. You are going to be more likely to run aground. I'm going to be interested to see how they work out cruiser gameplay. Now, also, if they can get the Italian cruisers out quickly, they might be able to beat another game to get them out before them, say. That could be quite interesting, because it would give them a slight advantage. But as we see here, the guns are sort of conventionally placed. The ship has very light armour, it's got a very good engine, it's a very fast boat, but it is just, basically, it chooses not to use armour, and uses the speed to its advantage. Where was it? There was a very good shot somewhere in here. There we go, that's what I'm looking for. So you can see here with the tank on board, you can see how big these ships are. You know, they are big ships. You know, these are big boats. You know, I don't think we're going to get battleships. I think they're just going to be too hard to play with. But cruisers are definitely the way forward, and it's going to be really interesting. But we're not just getting an Italian cruiser, we are getting a British cruiser as well. We're getting an E-class, the Emerald class, HMS Enterprise in fact. Now, HMS Enterprise, a British light cruiser, was put into service in 1926, becoming the second and last E-class Emerald combat ship in the British Crown's forces. The light cruisers in this series were conceived conceived as mobile and relatively well-armoured ships for conducting reconnaissance among squadrons of battleships, escorting convoys, and leading groups of small mine and torpedo ships. Based on these objectives, particular attention was paid at the design stage to the light cruiser's seaworthiness. In fact, the E-class cruiser became some of the fastest cruisers of the time, though by the start of the Second World War they were showing their age in comparison to the naval fleets from other nations. What sets the Enterprise apart from the sister E-class ships was her experimental mount for 2 large caliber weapons. The Enterprise light cruiser can reach 33 knots and has good armour up to 75mm around the engine and boiler, 50mm of belt armour and 25mm of hull armour and deck armour plating. The cruiser's main armament includes 6 152mm guns, 2 in a turret at the front and another 5 in a single mounts. HMS Enterprise's auxiliary armament consists of 3 102mm guns for anti-aircraft defence. She has quadruple 40mm anti-aircraft guns, 6 twin and 6 single 20mm mounts. In addition, the cruiser also carries torpedo racks and a simple release rack for depth charges. Now, the Emerald is a ship that you probably will know if you play World of Warships. In that, there is the single mount turrets on her. She doesn't have the experimental front mount. That is something that is new and different. One thing I do find interesting is there is a Kingfisher on board. Yes, we have a catapult plane. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, in comparison to World of Warships, the Emerald is going to be a pretty heavy cruiser, just because the Italian cruiser that we have is basically a destroyer. This is actually a proper cruiser now. Although it's a light cruiser, it is a true cruiser. And there's a Matilda on board. As you can see just how large this ship is. It is a very big old boat. Now, the turret here was designed for, I think it was the Leander class. I'm trying to think off my top of my head, which is a bit hard. Sorry, I'm a bit sick today. I do apologise about the stammering and bad voice. So the turret was designed for slightly later cruisers and mounted on board this one, so she could have the front turrets. I don't know if it was actually used in service with this configuration. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to do some reading. But again, good boat. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes, because this is your gunnery control station here. This is where you the gunner would be for everything like that. There is a lot of stuff around, so it's going to be very hard to see details. So I do wonder how they're going to work that out, because the smokestacks, everything on the ship is going to get in the way a lot in that respect, because currently how they do it is just see here on, yeah, so you can see here with the Italian cruiser, the gun station at the back here, they've got the front and the back, of course, but the back section here is very open, so you can see everything. The front section is very open at the front, but you're going to have big blind spots. So I do wonder how they're going to do it. Maybe they'll put you up on the top of the section there. I don't know how they're going to do it on the British classes, though. Maybe you'll be stationed up above the bridge on this section here, maybe, just so you get a bit of a better view. But this is big news. Cruisers are confirmed. Now, it's going to be light cruisers, light to medium, like auxiliary cruisers. We're not going to be getting the big old heavy cruisers, things like the Indianapolis, things like that, which are, you know, your big, basically just a step below Belfast and all that sort of stuff, which are just a step below your sort of battleship sort of rating cruisers. But light cruisers are definitely going to be interesting. I think they're going to have to redesign the map system as well, because maps, you want bigger maps for cruisers. You don't want them in knife fighting all the time. You want to have a bit of range. I also feel that game mode needs improving too. At the moment, the game mode is simply capture A, B and C point. They need to change it up for ships. Maybe have capital ships. So you have to protect a group of capital ships. And that would also mean that naval fighters would have a use, because you'd be able to use your naval planes to land on, say, an aircraft carrier or things like that. For some reason that's not working. Joy, joy, joy. But it would mean that naval fighters and bombers, things like that, do have more use. A bit like Air RB, where you have to, if you bomb out the bases and the airfield, you can then attack. So have, say, the aircraft carriers being sort of semi-invincible until you destroy the, like, 3 groups of other ships. So you could have, say, we'll use this blank space here. So on the outside here, so here and here, you have 2 groups of merchant vessels, and then in the middle, at the very back of the map, you have 3 aircraft carriers. And if all those ships, those 2 merchants get destroyed on the flanks, then you can destroy the aircraft carrier and you can win the game. Something like that would make the game game mode more interesting. What I do find very interesting, though, is the fact that we have catapult launched planes on this ship. Are they going to actually use it? Don't know. What they could do for this is actually make it like the arcade system, so you can get in the plane and launch it yourself and fly it. A bit like ATGMs, you sort of leave your ship for a while, you fly the plane. Now, of course, this is just going to be a spotter plane, so maybe it could be AI controlled and give you... I really don't know what they can do for it. You see, because this is a scout plane, it's not really a... The OS2U Kingfisher was designed more of the scout sort of use, and on board this cruiser it is a scout plane, really. It's not there for fighting per se. You can use it for a fighter, of course, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that, because if it's AI controlled, and then you could launch it and say it will distract maybe a couple of fighters or something like that. But I don't know if they're going to play around with sort of... Maybe you can launch it and use it to view from for your gunnery. I really don't know what they can do with that. It's kind of a... It's an awkward thing. I really am not sure how you would use it. Of course, it would be a single-use item, because in combat you can't recover these planes. What happens is when this is launched, there are the cranes you can see either side there. There's actually a really good shot. Unfortunately, I can't get into it because it seems to be broken. But there was a really good picture somewhere in here that was... See if I can get this working and find that photo. There we go. So as you can see here on the Emerald, there are the spare parts for the Kingfisher, the spare floats, spare wings, things like that. So, basically those planes were launched just for reconnaissance roles, and then the cranes, as you can see either side of the ship, were then used to lower, hoist the plane back up. Well, this crane here actually is the one that was used for this crane is used for the plane. Would go down, pick the plane up, lift it back on board, place it back on the catapult, and then it would be used again as needed. But these planes weren't sort of recoverable in a combat role, because it takes a lot of time. Maybe you could recover it, say it takes about 50 seconds to recover, you need to land the plane next to the ship to recover it. I don't know, there's lots of mechanics they could put into play, but I think this will be a single-use item. As I say, it's not going to be a very useful thing, but it could be interesting to see how they implement it. There are definitely going to be other light cruisers to come. It will be interesting to see what we get, though. I will have to do a video on possible speculation at some stage soon. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I found it interesting. Give me a like and a comment if you have. Let me know what you think about cruisers. Let me know what you think about the naval betas and stuff like that. And in general, just let me know what you're thinking. And have a lovely day. And this is me, Screezilla, out. Bye-bye.